Hello, this is Josh Belk with Belk on Business podcast. Been a little while since I've recorded one of these. Spent much of the last, probably month or so pretty sick, and then kind of working up against the filing deadline for tax returns. So just kind of fell on the priority spectrum. So going to try to get back into this and recording podcast. And today I'm really going to kind of address how we spend our time, mainly as it relates to social media. I've entitled this particular podcast, Social Media, the Enemy of Contentment. Social Media, the Enemy of Contentment. Over this time, being somewhat ill and actually spent a few days kind of mostly in bed, I really kind of began to think quite a bit about how I was prioritizing and spending my time. And I kind of noticed noticed a few things, and maybe you can agree with this and maybe kind of look at yourself and maybe see some of the same types of trends, what we find ourselves doing. And one thing I noticed was how I was spending my time as it related to social media and also the impact that it had on me personally. And I'm going to kind of go down that road just a little bit in this particular podcast and point out a few things as far as it relates to social media and its potential impact on us as individuals, how we think, and also our businesses. Years ago, I was given a book, and I think I was in college by a college professor, and this book was given to me, and I remember reading it. And a man by the name of Neil Postman wrote a book called "Amusing Ourselves to Death." And of course, this is back in the 90s, and in the 1990s, we didn't have social media and kind of these things that we think about now. But really, kind of the book really had to do with kind of the way that entertainment affects ourselves and the way we view the world. And basically, we find ourselves many times wanting to be entertained, even in kind of the normal, maybe more difficult conversations or maybe more difficult learning processes. We prefer to be entertained. Well, nowadays, it seems to be everything has kind of gotten filtered through entertainment. And that entertainment has affected our culture and it affects on how we think. And I think maybe the primary way that this is infiltrated into us is through social media. We have become a society that is constantly seeking entertainment, essentially amusing ourselves to death. First point I'm going to make here as it relates to social media is that a comparison is truly the enemy of contentment. And it isn't comparison with ourselves, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, but our comparison with other people. I was having a conversation as it related to social media, namely one of the platforms with one of my team members a couple weeks ago. And this had followed really as I sat down and began to analyze myself, how I was spending my time, and really the effect that social media was having on me. I literally just deleted my page, and I just simply went offline as it relates to that particular social media platform. And from the conversation I had with one of my team members who had basically done this about a year and a half ago, had gone off one of the platforms, we really began to talk about the way that we found ourselves judging others and judging ourselves. And I know for myself, I would scroll through timelines and I'd begin to judge people. And I would judge them by their post, what they were doing. And that's probably, maybe that's just me. Maybe you don't have that issue. I think probably for most of us, we do. We begin to judge others. For her, she said that she found herself comparing her life to the other person, saying, "Oh, that person, it seems like they've got it all together," or "They're in a better position than I." Then she began to feel down on herself. I think for many of us, we kind of go through and we scroll through and begin to judge other people's decisions or maybe judge their character, and that's not really a good, healthy place to be. I think really we find ourselves, our own spirits being disturbed by what we're seeing on social media. So another thing that I've noticed, and this may have been more than anything, what kind of caused me to kind of want to really take a step away, is I saw some good, well-meaning people that I really like, clients, friends, really begin to argue, get really toxic with each other on social media. And I looked at that and I'm like, you know what, this is not something I really want to be reading or I want to be involved with. I found it affecting me. People, trying to do business together, and somebody else wanted to kind of step in and criticize the other person because they didn't get a deal, and kind of all this stuff going back and forth, and accusations being made, and of course nothing's going to get resolved on that particular platform. And so they began slinging mud at each other, trying to make the other person look bad, And you know what? That's not really something that I want to subject myself to. So we find ourselves comparing ourselves to other people. We can find ourselves being judgmental. But I think really maybe a better use of our time, if we want to talk about comparison, is really kind of comparing ourselves with ourselves. Instead of comparing ourselves to others, are we today in a better place than we were yesterday? Am I doing better today than I was yesterday? If I look back at myself a few months ago or a year ago, have I improved? Have I made steps forward? And I think that comparison with ourselves isn't the enemy of contentment. I think that really can be a fuel to try to help improve ourselves, to move ourselves forward. But comparing ourselves to others, to other businesses, to other people can really disturb our spirit and put us in a place to where we find ourselves just consumed with other people instead of really trying to work on ourselves. Number two, social media can result in distraction and lack of focus. We see those notifications pop up on our phone. Oh, somebody posted, and immediately we got to see what they posted. We should be, deeply focused in our work, doing the things that we should do. We find ourselves at meals, sitting there trying to maybe out to dinner with a spouse, or spending time with your children, or even in a business meeting where we should be focusing. I found myself even on Zoom calls talking to clients, and something pops up, or I get a response on something, or somebody makes a comment, and even if I don't pick it up and look at it, immediately it's like, oh, I wonder what they said. Or we're focused on the number of likes. I'll talk about this here in a little bit, but social media really can, and I think more than anything, can really create a distraction and really result in a lack of good focus. Some people can time block, and they can go through and say, okay, I'm only going to spend time on social media during this time during the day. Maybe you're disciplined enough to do that. I think probably most people aren't. But I think one thing we can control is the effect that what we're reading on social media, that effect that it has on our mindset, on our paradigm, on our own spirit. Number three, social media platforms can end up being a place of competition instead of collaboration. This really comes from, I have a really good friend, a dear friend that's running for political office. And a few weeks ago on a Sunday morning, I was actually in a church service where we attend the same congregation and the same local assembly, and she was there, and I saw her, and she wasn't looking for attention. She was kneeling and spending some time in prayer, and I kind of began to kind of just think about, I wonder if the person that she's running against has spent any time in prayer, and I know that she really prays for the people that she hopes to serve. And really spent a lot of time trying to improve herself. The very next day, I was working out, and I was on listening to actually YouTube, and an ad popped up, and it was very critical toward her. And of course, immediately, I became just kind of upset over this. And the person she's running against, not a bad person, the incumbent, but really just blatantly just trying to put her in a poor light. And of course, knowing her well, I just knew that that it just wasn't true. But it ended up really having this impact on me. And I really began to wonder if so much time is spent on these platforms criticizing other people, if time would be better spent in truly trying to find ways to collaborate, even on social media platforms. Are there ways that we can do a better job of collaborating instead of being critical and tearing other people down, that type of thing. But social media, I think, really is just kind of a picture of what we've become as a society. And that really is just a lot of competition kind of at each other. It can be very toxic. Even, somebody disagrees with us. So then, we just, simply can't just keep our mouth shut. We have to say something. We have to be toxic. We have to kind of, put ourselves out there that you disagree with this person or you don't like this person. We see this especially, when it comes to religion and politics. I'm not sure if anybody has ever changed their religious perspective or opinions or their political based on something that was posted on social media. Maybe somebody has. I know that my particular opinions haven't been changed by somebody criticizing somebody else's religious or political views on social media. So really, how are we using social media? I know for a lot of people, they'll say, well, we use it for marketing, whatever the case may be. And of course that, that can be a decent reason for using social media. But I think for the most part, it is kind of one of those things that it becomes not used for those means, but really we end up spending our time doing a lot of other things on social media that isn't helpful. Number 4, social media keeps us from making best use of our time. I noticed actually a number of months ago. It's been a difficult year for my wife Angie and for myself and for a few different reasons, but health and some other things going on. But I noticed that Angie had really just kind of stopped scrolling social media at all. She's still on there. She has her page on I think 1 or 2 of the platforms, but she rarely ever goes on except for check on some groups and that type of thing. But I noticed instead of wasting time scrolling social media, that she had transitioned into memorizing scripture, and something that helps provide her comfort and provide her help, and something that she needs especially during this season of time. And I began to kind of reflect and ponder on this a little bit. I began to think, beyond just the time wasting on social media, what other good uses could we make of that time? So instead of scrolling social media, maybe send somebody an encouraging text that maybe be having a difficult day or maybe is ill. Imagine the books that we could read, the articles that we could read, learn a foreign language. All these just little things where we're 5 minutes in line at the post office or at the grocery store and we want to pick up our phone because we're no longer able to just kind of stand there just with ourselves. We have to be doing something. So instead of picking up that phone and scrolling social media, maybe sending an encouraging text, read an article that may help you either personally or professionally. Work your way through maybe a book that you're trying to read or you should read. But find a better use of your time. And I think if we find better uses of our time, even in those few minute moments, that we'll find ourselves improving day by day, and also finding our impact and our influence in the lives of others increase as well. Number 5, social media can put us seeking temporary dopamine hits instead of working on ourselves. And I know when going back to kind of judging ourselves, and I know in the past, even putting out the podcast, I would wonder, how many people are actually listening to this? How many likes? Did somebody comment? And these types of things. And I found myself worrying about how did other people perceive me? How were other people receiving this information? That I had to really evaluate, why am I doing this? Yes, there is a temporary kind of dopamine hit that comes when somebody likes or somebody gives you a positive comment, those types of things. But really, is that the approach that we should be taking to social media? And so much of it is vanity. There's a scriptural principle that talks about how vanity, wealth earned through vanity, is quickly diminished. And so many people out there, I mean, they're trying to earn money being an influencer, putting content out there, those types of things. Well, that type of wealth kind of earned through those more egotistical ways will be quickly diminished. And I think if we, instead of kind of looking for avenues to kind of get those quick dopamine hits and kind of those vanity type ways of getting attention, to truly spend the time working on ourselves, I think in the long run, we'll find ourselves in a better position financially, emotionally, spiritually, and I think even physically. I've even found myself from time to time scrolling on social media when I've been working out. So instead of being in there and I enjoy lifting and I'll get on an elliptical after I lift and that type of thing, but I'll find myself on social media, 5 minutes later, I've missed 2 or 3 sets. I've wasted my time, or think about I've neglected the workout routine, or I find myself in bed at night before I go to bed scrolling social media, and it's 30 minutes later where I should have gotten good quality sleep. Instead, now I've been scrolling social media. Now I may be frustrated about something, so now I'm not going to sleep well. You kind of end up with these kind of downward spirals. So I think holistically, taking a look at social media, yes, there can be some good reasons for social media. But I know for myself, and maybe as you kind of go through and evaluate this for yourself, kind of see that maybe there are more negatives than there are positives. And I just wanted to kind of take a step back and maybe talk a little bit of a different way on the podcast today on kind of part of a little bit of my journey here over the last a couple months, especially as it relates to social media. And hopefully this particular podcast, you found something in it that may be helpful, or maybe consider, especially more than anything else, how are we spending our time? Is what we are doing, is it truly the best use of our time, and then evaluating how am I using my time and its impact on our spirit and the way that we look at the world, and especially the way that we look at each other. Once again, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Have a wonderful day.